So, semen retention. Terribly lonely men will become socially awkward and mentally disturbed. Now, I believe I've talked about, it's gonna when you're alone a lot and you're like chronically alone, terribly alone. Uh, that's gonna make you socially awkward when you start getting around people, because you isolate yourself, right? But a lot of people, one thing I haven't really touched on that much is how it will mentally disturb you when you are alone and you're like chronically alone where you hate being alone, but you're alone all the time, right? And you got all these bad habits and stuff, you become mentally disturbed. I remember I was talking to my brother about it was just something that happened with this little girl one time. It was like a story he was telling me about somebody, and they had stuck her like in a closet or something, or like in a room or something, and it was like pitch black dark, and they left her in there for like years, and all she had was like a bucket and stuff like that. And I remember they had her in there for years. He said they had her in there for years, and then when they let her out, she was like looking like a pure animal, like she didn't know how to speak or anything like that. And obviously, I know, most people never is gonna. That's such an extreme case, right? But I just think even when you isolate yourself a little bit, just like how in a normal society where you're alone a lot, but not like that alone, but just you're alone a lot. I think it can have effects similar to that, but not, obviously not to that extent, where you kind of just you lose touch with yourself, you lose touch with your kind of humanity, and you start thinking in more like you become mentally disturbed, you know. You start thinking in different ways, just that's evil and stuff, And I think human connection, I think being around people, I think helping people, this is all stuff that keep us sane and keep us mentally sane. You get what I mean? Whenever you start taking away stuff that a human really need mentally to stay stable, because it's definitely stuff out there that can make a normal human being become like insane, or some people might call them crazy. Just like if like you have kids that's when they're younger, you know, if they were neglected by their parents, like extremely neglected, like abused and stuff, when these kids get older, they, it turns into something even bigger and it gets worse and worse. So I think trauma and stuff like that, and just how you're what you're doing over a long period of time is gonna affect a lot of stuff. And when you're a man that's really lonely, which I feel like in this generation, we're having more men that are lonely, more men that want to be alone. I think that kind of ruins your ability to kind of be I would say like a loving person, because you really just only, how can I put it? I've noticed in my own life. I don't know exactly how to put it, but let me say this. I think in my own life, the times where I was extremely lonely, I kind of lost touch with other people's emotions or how other people feel. Not saying you should care how about other people feel all the time, but I think that you start to become a person that like you don't think in the norm no more. You think in your own way, which is like you kind of allow your imagination to do whatever it wants to do. You become just less human. You become more animal, like you become more evil. You get what I mean? And I think that's why we have to get away from isolating each other and being alone all the time, because it's obviously going to have negative effects mentally, you know, and it's not good for you long term, right? It's not good for you. It can be good for some people who is actually doing what they're supposed to in life, but most people, I feel like, that are lonely, they don't want to be alone, and they're not taking care of themselves while they're being alone, And I used to always have this mindset with being on semen retention, like, oh, I don't never have to talk to a girl. I don't never have to do this or do that. I think being on semen retention has taught me that human connection matters, you know? And it's not always about you. It's not always about, I feel like finding purpose in life, when you find purpose, purpose is all about helping the other person, helping the next person. It's not about you, benefit this, benefit that, what I get, what's my reward. No. Sometimes it's just as basic as connecting with people, even if it's one person or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people or 40 people. And it's not always about me, you know. And I think when you get lonely and stuff and you start to look at yourself more and more, you know, it just makes you so much more prone to just having a negative mindset about life. And the longer you be alone, the more you dislike people, I feel like a lot of the times. And you never recognize like the wrongness in how you think. Hold on. Hold on. My bad. My bad. My bad. I had to sneeze. I didn't want y'all to see all that snot and stuff. But yeah, man. Hold on. Yeah, man. You know, we living in a generation where more and more men are alone. And having a girlfriend is fine, but I've seen with my own eyes, like, a lot of dudes, they'll be, hold on, man. Dang. A lot of dudes that have these girlfriends and stuff. I'm just gonna let y'all know, like, okay, just having sex, just having a girlfriend, that doesn't mean that you're not lonely still, you know? Because I've seen guys have girlfriends and their life still be bad. They still be depressed. They still, because a lot of times, I don't want y'all to think that getting girls is like, that's something that's just like, okay, you're not gonna be depressed no more. If I get a girlfriend, I'm not gonna feel bad no more. Uh, I feel like it can help and it can make you happier, but it won't fix it. It's just more like a band-aid over it. Like, well, like that helps you a little bit, but it doesn't fix anything. You fix it by controlling it. You don't fix it by giving it a slightly better outlet. I think when you masturbate and watch porn and stuff and you're lonely, and then you think in your head, okay, well, instead of doing this, I need to get a girlfriend and I just need to sleep with her. I think you make the situation a little bit better. You do. But that doesn't fix it until you can actually control yourself sexually, not just give it, you know what I'm saying, a better outlet. A better outlet is better, right? But it won't fix it. You only fix it when you can control it. Yeah, that's all I got to say for this video, man. Sorry about sneezing and all that. Peace out.